I live in Boise, in the state of Idaho. I work at a distribution warehouse near the highway. I wake up every day a little after 5 in the morning, make coffee that's way too strong, and move on autopilot. I always get back after 6 in the evening, fix something to eat, leave the television on just to break the silence, and go to sleep early. Not out of discipline, out of sheer exhaustion. Sometimes it almost feels normal. But I know there's something in me that never went back to where it belongs. I'm divorced. I have 2 children, or at least I had. They're adults now. They must be in their early 20s by now. I don't know exactly how old. I didn't keep up with birthdays. I didn't see graduations. I wasn't present for important changes. That was a choice. Mine, and theirs too. There was a time when my life was different. I lived in a bigger house, in a quiet neighborhood, with kids riding bikes in the late afternoon. I worked fewer hours, I had plans, I had a family dinner routine. I had a friend I considered like a brother. One of those who walks into your house without knocking, who grabs a beer from the fridge without asking. And I had a wife. For many years I thought I lived one of those ordinary lives. Stable marriage, 2 kids growing up, normal problems, normal bills, normal frustrations, arguments about money, about being tired, about who was picking up who from school, nothing off script. If someone had asked me back then if I suspected anything, I would have said no. And at the same time, today I know that isn't true. There were silences that lasted too long, messages deleted too fast, mood swings I blamed on stress, a phone always face down, conversations that stopped when I entered the room. But the mind is a strange thing. When you want to keep something standing, you learn to look away from the details. I trusted 2 people almost blindly, the woman I shared a bed with and the man I shared laughter, barbecues, tools, old stories with. That trust wasn't built quickly. It was years. Years of living together. Years of routine. Years of believing that certain things simply don't happen to you. The part that hurts the most, it was something that grew underneath, hidden, while I lived, laughed, worked, raised my kids, and called that man my best friend. The memory of that night still comes back whole. No matter how many years pass, it always arrives with the same weight. It was a Friday, early fall. I had left work early because one of the trucks had a problem during loading. I got home a little after 4 in the afternoon. The house was too quiet for that time. Normally the TV would already be on, some loud music playing, or the boys' footsteps running from one side to the other. That day, nothing. I hung up my jacket and went into the kitchen. I found only a note on the counter, written quickly. Took the kids out to eat. We'll be back later. That wasn't strange. What was strange was her phone forgotten next to the note. She never forgot her phone. I picked it up on impulse. It wasn't even conscious suspicion. It was more like a stupid discomfort, like when something is out of place and it bothers you. The screen lit up with several unread message notifications. One specific name caught my attention, a name I knew better than I wanted to, my friend. In that second, I still tried to convince myself it was something trivial, a joke, organizing some event, anything. But my body understood before my mind did. My hands started to sweat. My heart sped up. I unlocked it. It wasn't one message. There were many. Scrolling up, the history stretched back for days. I had never gone through her phone, never. Photos that shouldn't exist. Videos recorded in places I recognized. Words that never should have been written between those 2 people. The phone was trembling in my hand. I read and reread the same lines because it didn't feel real. When they came back, it was already past 9 at night. I heard the car in the garage, the doors slamming, the excited voices. I was sitting at the kitchen table, the phone still in my hand, turned off. She came in first, smiled when she saw me. A normal smile. A smile I had seen thousands of times. That almost made me throw up. I held out the phone in silence. She understood immediately. Her face changed slowly. It wasn't shock. It was defeat. Like someone who knows exactly at what point they lost the game. She sat down in the chair in front of me without saying a word. The kids were still in the hallway laughing about something. I said his name just once. That was it. I didn't need to say anything else. There was no crying, no denial, no attempt to minimize. She just lowered her head and admitted it. Said it started without realizing it. Said it became constant. Said she never planned for it to last that long. Said she no longer knew how to stop. When she said how long it had been going on, I felt something inside me sink. It wasn't anger. It was a strange feeling of uselessness, as if my entire recent life had been borrowed by someone else without me knowing. I asked if the kids knew. She said no. I asked if anyone else knew. She said no. I asked if he came to our house when I wasn't there. She didn't answer. That was answer enough. I grabbed a backpack from the bedroom. threw in some clothes, documents, my phone charger, and my wallet. I didn't take anything else. Not personal objects, not memories. I passed by the boys in the living room. They asked where I was going. I said I needed to be away for a few days. I didn't know how to say more than that. I drove with no destination for almost an hour. I stopped in a parking lot and slept inside the car. I woke up with my back hurting and my head throbbing. The divorce started a few days later. There was no court battle, no fight over furniture, objects, details. What I had really lost wasn't on any spreadsheet. One of the few things I insisted on was a paternity test. It was a practical necessity. I needed to know, at least officially, where I still existed. Both were mine. When the result came in, I felt relief, and at the same time, a strange sadness. I set up a small apartment on the other side of the city, 2 bedrooms. One of them stayed empty most of the time. The boys still spent some weekends with me at first. We barely talked. I avoided the subject. They avoided asking. And while all of this was adjusting in a crooked way, I still believed somehow that the worst was already over. I was wrong. The divorce was quick. In the first few months, the boys still came on weekends. They arrived with backpacks far too full for 2 days and with a strange way of looking at me, as if I were both their father and a stranger. I tried to keep everything the same. Pancakes on Saturday morning, some old movie at night, loose conversation about school. It worked for a few hours. Then the silence came back to fill the spaces between us. It didn't take long for me to realize that something had changed on the other side. First came the small details, an offhand comment about him picking them up from school because their mom was busy. Then a mention of a dinner the 3 of them had together. Then the words started coming out more naturally. He was no longer mom's friend. He became just him, said the same way they used to say, Dad. The first time I saw the 3 of them together was at a high school football game. The stands were full. I arrived a few minutes before kickoff, as I always did, and sat farther back. I liked watching the boys enter the field. It was one of the few things that still connected me to them in a way that was ours. Then I saw them. They arrived together. My ex-wife in the middle, one on each side, and him walking next to them, laughing at something one of the boys said. When he noticed my presence, he gave a brief wave. The boys didn't wave. During the game, they leaned toward him in tense moments, celebrated points with him, shared the same bag of popcorn. I watched everything in silence, hands folded in my lap, feeling a kind of quiet humiliation. From that point on, that became routine. School events, parent nights, end-of-year presentations, birthdays. I always arrived alone. They always arrived together. And the more natural it became, the more I felt like I was being pushed out of a space I still believed was mine. My birthday was coming up. I was going to turn 40. It wasn't anything special to the world, but to me it had a strange weight, maybe because I had already been alone for too long. I thought about it for days before calling. I didn't want to sound needy. I didn't want to sound like I was begging for attention. I just wanted to do something simple, normal, a dinner out, a table, awkward conversation, forced laughter, if that was the case, but together. I called the oldest one first on a Wednesday night after 7. He answered quickly, like he already had the phone in his hand. I said my birthday would fall on a Saturday, said I wanted to invite the 2 of them to have dinner with me. A simple place, nothing fancy. A regular restaurant, the kind you sit at without overthinking it. I said I had already even chosen the place. He stayed silent for a few seconds. Then he said they wouldn't be able to go. I asked why. He replied with that kind of casual tone that hurts more than rudeness. We already planned a trip with him. The word him didn't need a name. He said everything was already booked, that they couldn't cancel at the last minute. I went silent. Then he tried to soften it. We can pick another day later, okay? Another day. I asked if they couldn't go with me, that I could move the celebration up. He said he would have to check with his brother and let me know. I thanked him, said it was fine, said I understood. We hung up. Neither of them ever called me back. On the day of my birthday, I kept checking my phone all the time, but I didn't receive a single happy birthday. On their social media, photos smiling, enjoying the trip with my ex-friend. That night, I ended up having dinner alone at the same restaurant I had chosen for the 3 of us. I sat at the same table I had imagined. I ordered the same food I knew they liked. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just felt that kind of bitter emptiness. And it was that day that I understood something that had taken years to fully form. I was still their father in memory, but I was no longer any kind of priority in their lives. My family started to speak up. My mother said I needed to be bigger than the situation, that the boys needed stability, that man was helping. My sister insisted that I shouldn't hold on to resentment. that I needed to be mature. And all the time I heard the same sentence, said in different ways, think about the children. So I thought about them. I never called my ex-wife a traitor in front of them. I never called that man anything. When they asked why I wasn't going to a specific event, I said I was working. When they mentioned something they had done with him, I nodded and changed the subject. There were days when that was unbearable. On Christmas of the second year after the divorce, I was invited to dinner at my ex-mother-in-law's house. I accepted because I thought it would be good for the boys. I brought gifts, arrived early, helped set the table. He arrived later, bringing a dessert I had seen him bring to many old lunches back when he was still my friend. The four of them sat together. I stayed at the end of the table. At one point during the night, the oldest son told a funny story from school. Everyone laughed. He leaned forward and messed up the boy's hair in an automatic, intimate, fatherly way. It was fast. 2 seconds maybe, but those 2 seconds cost me dearly. I left before midnight. After that, the boys' visits to my apartment became more spaced out. First, a few missed weekends. Then, an entire month without showing up. When they came, they were in a hurry. They no longer brought real clothes. They came with the feeling that they were just fulfilling an obligation. I kept going to everything I could, even when I knew I would be in a corner, even when I knew he would be there, occupying a place that used to be mine. There was something in me that needed to insist, as if each appearance was a silent way of saying, I still exist. But existing like that is exhausting. Little by little, I stopped being invited. Some events I found out about only after they had already happened. The photos appeared on my children's social media, the four of them smiling, always the four of them. The caption spoke of family. That word started to lose its meaning for me. I told myself it was part of the process, that things would adjust, that with time the boys would understand, that phase would pass. Update 1. The news came without ceremony. It was a short message from the youngest son, sent on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, a little after 4. He is sick, very sick. That was all. I was at work, stacking boxes, my back sweaty and my shirt stuck to my body. I read the message 3 times, as if waiting for something more to appear between the words. Nothing did. I put the phone back in my pocket and went back to what I was doing. On the outside, I kept functioning. On the inside, I felt something cold, almost a relief that still embarrasses me to admit. In the following days, I was told little by little, constant appointments, tests, hospital, aggressive treatment. Nothing was working as they expected. He was wasting away fast, terminal condition. My ex-wife called me one night when I was already home, eating dinner on the couch. The phone vibrated on the table. Her name appeared on the screen like a ghost from another life. Her voice was different. She said he wanted to see me, said he wasn't well, that time was short, that he needed to close things properly. She used that exact expression. Close things properly, ask me for forgiveness. As if all of that were just an unresolved matter between 2 adults who had fallen out for some trivial reason. I listened to everything in silence. When she finished, I just said I wouldn't go. She insisted, talked about forgiveness, talked about maturity, said that dying carrying guilt wasn't fair to anyone. I replied, calmly even to myself, that I owed that man nothing. Not a conversation, not my presence, not absolution. She cried. I hung up. 2 days later, it was the boys' turn. The oldest called first, near 8 at night. His voice sounded tense, as if he had been rehearsing that speech for days. He said it was the right thing to do, that regardless of the past, I needed to be bigger than that no one deserved to die without receiving forgiveness, that I needed to think about them. The youngest repeated the speech the following night, with different words and the same idea. He said that man had been a great father to them, that he had been present when I was distant, that he had helped with things I never helped with, that it wasn't fair for me to deny that to someone who was dying. I stayed silent while he spoke. When he finished, I asked if they knew exactly what they were asking me to do. The youngest answered yes, that they knew everything, that nothing changed the fact that that man had been more present than I had in recent years. That was the moment something inside me broke. There was no long argument. I said I wouldn't go. I said that if they truly believed that man had been more of a father than I was, then I had nothing left to do there, that they could go on with the family they had chosen, that I would no longer place myself in that corner role, that uncomfortable extra. They tried to talk at the same time. One got angry. The other cried. I hung up. That night, I didn't sleep. He died a few days later. I found out through silence. No call, no message. Just the news that came through someone else days later, as if commenting on something distant. He passed. On the day of the funeral, I worked. I did overtime. I came home tired, took a shower, ate something, and lay down. I felt nothing. The boys didn't speak to me. The weeks went by without a single word. Then months came. Then years. At first it hurt every day. Later, only once in a while. Something that never fully disappears, but that you learn to ignore. I still thought of them, not as present sons, but as fixed memories. As something that once existed and no longer does. I changed jobs twice, changed neighborhoods, switched cars, changed routines. The boys grew up far from me. I heard about some things by chance. An offhand comment from my sister at a family lunch I attended out of obligation. One living in another city, the other staying nearby. None of it came directly from them. I woke up early, went to work, had 2 closer friends. One from work, another from back when I was still married. We saw each other sometimes to grab something to eat, talk about nothing important. I didn't really date anyone. I went out with a few women over the years, nothing serious. It always ended the same way. I couldn't go beyond a certain point. Not exactly out of fear, but out of lack of will. I had already lived an entire life inside another person. I didn't feel the need to repeat the experience. It was at the beginning of this year that changed. It was an ordinary night. I had just gotten home from work around 7 and collapsed onto the couch. I picked up my phone more out of habit than interest. The notification was there. A message on a social network I barely used. "I've been thinking about you." I stared at the screen for a few seconds without opening it. I already knew who it was from before even reading the full name. When I opened it, I saw the name of my oldest son. I didn't reply. A few days later, another one came. "I miss you. I know things went wrong, but I want to talk." I didn't reply either. A week later, another message. I was young. I didn't understand everything. Today I do. I want to try again. I read that line several times. The problem wasn't the attempt itself. It was the delay. Like someone who arrives to put out a fire when only ashes remain. I stayed silent. Then he found my number. I received the first text message one afternoon while I was unloading boxes. The phone vibrated in my pocket. I looked by reflex. "Dad," just that word. No explanation, no addition. I didn't reply. More messages followed. Long ones. He talked about guilt, about how he had matured, about how that man's death had changed the way he saw everything. He talked about regret, about missing me. In one of the messages, he sent me a photo. It was me holding him when he was a baby. I remembered that day exactly. I remembered the small weight of his body in my arm, the strange feeling of responsibility mixed with the fear of not being enough. When I saw that photo, I didn't feel tenderness. I felt anger. That photo wasn't a reminder of love. It was a reminder of everything that had been thrown away. He kept insisting. From time to time, another message would appear. How are you? Please answer me. I need to talk to you at least once." I started to feel surrounded, not by him exactly, but by the memories that came with him. Update 2. Last week, after yet another series of messages, I was sitting at the kitchen table, eating in silence, when the phone vibrated again. Another attempt, another plea, another justification. I picked up the phone and typed the reply. It wasn't long. It wasn't impulsive. I said I no longer considered him my son. I said he needed to stop looking for me. I said I wasn't interested in rebuilding anything. I said he had already shown me who he was when he chose that man over me, and that choices have consequences that don't disappear. I sent it. He replied a few minutes later. "Please don't do this. I was just a kid. You're being worse than him by not forgiving." I blocked the number. I stayed sitting there for a while afterward, waiting for some reaction inside me, to feel regret, guilt, or a greater emptiness than usual. I felt none of that, only a strange sense of closure. I thought everything had ended there. The block, the blunt reply. For 2 days, the phone stayed in absolute silence, as if it had finally understood the message. I returned to my routine. The phone rang one afternoon after 5. I was still at work. I answered. This time I heard the voice of my oldest son. He didn't ask for anything right away. He said he needed to tell me something important. His voice sounded tired, without anger, as if he had already gone through every possible outburst before speaking to me. He started with their mother. After that man's death, her situation collapsed fast. The bills started to pile up. The rent fell behind. The credit cards were maxed out. She tried to find work but couldn't get anything steady. Age weighed against her. The interviews went nowhere. Desperation set in. Then came the first heavy revelation. He never wanted to officially marry her. There was always a different excuse. Documents, taxes, promises to fix it later. A later that never came. She believed that the years together would be enough as protection. They weren't. Without a formal marriage, without a will signed before he died, She had no right to the inheritance. Weeks after his death, a lawyer appeared representing a boy from another state. A kid no one there knew. Test confirmed. Old record. A legally recognized biological son, the result of a relationship with a young woman from somewhere else. He never had contact with the child, never took part in raising him, but he had registered him as his son at the time. I remember he mentioned it back when we were friends, that during a trip he took, he thought he had gotten a woman pregnant. The entire inheritance went to that child. My son said his mother collapsed when she found out, not just because of the money, but because she realized she had spent years as the partner of someone who had never truly claimed her, and there was more. When she gained access to his phone, she found messages with other women, old and recent conversations. Among them, a co-worker, an active affair. That destroyed what remained of the image she had kept. While all of this was happening, they were also sinking. The financial help that had kept the house standing disappeared overnight. The bills fell on them. The car became a problem. The rent became a threat. The money they were expecting never came. My son was direct. They were struggling. His brother kept changing jobs without finding stability. He himself was falling behind on bills. Their mother was emotionally unstable and financially lost. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then came the request. He needed financial help. He said he didn't want to live at my expense. He talked about temporary support, a few months until they could reorganize. They had made wrong choices, and still expected that in the end, I would be there to soften the fall. I answered calmly. I said I was sorry for their situation, that I truly wished they could get back on their feet. And then I made it clear that I would not help them financially. On the other end of the line, the silence came heavy. He asked why. I answered with the only truth I had, because you only remember that I exist when everything collapses. He cried. I listened, but I didn't go back on it. We hung up without saying goodbye. And that night, for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel angry. And I later found out that at some point in that chaos, the oldest son was betrayed by his own fiancée. When he found out, he collapsed, spent days isolated, drank too much, cried too much. And it was there, according to them, that he finally understood me. Not because he remembered what I felt, but because he felt it in his own skin. Today, my life is exactly what I described at the beginning. Work, home, routine, a few friends, no great love story, no recent great tragedy, just a calm continuation of similar days. I am not unhappy. I am also not whole. I learned in the hardest possible way that blood ties do not prevent rupture. This is the story of someone who learned to close the door not out of hate, but out of limits, and to accept that not every family ends united. Some simply end.